the MARN Lounge Sessions became a very soft way at first of merging what is MARN, what is visual art, and connecting themselves to the performing arts world here in Milwaukee. And it works really well because all the arts are connected. If you really think about it, visual art is everywhere in music. It's on the album. It's in the clothes. It's in the fashion. They're already connected, right? And so I think being in this gallery specifically made a very natural like shift of like what happens when they're both in the same space, being appreciated at the same time. How do they play off of each other? What is the experience that is created?
You just heard Wanyah Leon give probably the most succinct encapsulation of what the MARN Lounge Session series is all about. Rather than enforce a separation between the visual arts and the performance arts, the Lounge Sessions brings the two together to produce simple set performances amid a backdrop of contemporary visual art that already lives on MARN's walls. This means paid opportunities for artists in a unique performance setting that encourages experimentation and growth, as well as an opportunity for the public to see these performers in these small settings as they experiment. As Wanyah will say in our interview, he has been involved in the Milwaukee art scene since he was a dancer at 11 years old. Like the man is young, but he has seen it all when it comes to the Milwaukee arts world. Since then, he has taken on many roles, including one as MARN's events coordinator. And as events coordinator, Wanyah oversees events at the MARN Art and Culture Hub, including the Lounge Sessions, and has been bringing talent to the MARN Lounge Sessions, including Clayton and Felix Ramsey, who you hear clips of during the interview. But why is Wanyah so excited about the potential of MARN Lounge Sessions? After all, there's lots of opportunities to experience live music in the city. What makes the Lounge Sessions so special? And who is Wanyah outside of his role at MARN? And how do the Lounge Sessions fit into his larger body of work as a dancer, photographer, and creative producer? I'm Sam Woods, MARN's communications manager, and I had a chance to talk with Wanyah about those questions and a little bit more. For now, though, we'll kick it off with Wanyah introducing himself.
So, my name is Wanyah Leon. I am a little bit of everything at this point, right?
True. Can confirm that.
But what I'll say is I actively call myself a creative producer. I'm owner and founder of Wolf Studios MKE. I am also co-owner of Insomniac Studios, which is a production house. And Wolf Studios MKE is a production studio, which, I mean, they sound similar, but they do different things, right? But a lot of my work is built around creating spaces, helping artists produce work, and essentially taking a lot of the administrative support out of the artist's hands. I take on that and just let them focus on being creative, right? So I help them be their most creative selves by doing a lot of that background work, but then also helping develop the vision, project design, really helping them put together cohesive ideas outside of just the art, but the infrastructure around the art, right? To make sure that they have like the tools, the resources, whatever they kind of need to be most effective with the art that they do. Personally, I've been a performer since I was 11. Wow. I've danced all across the city, the state. I've traveled a little bit. I've worked with, I've performed alongside Alvin Ailey. I've, performed at the Market Center. I performed at the Rep. I've been a little bit of everywhere at this point. And just in that, I've had the pleasure to experience art from a lot of different angles. So I've experienced from the dance perspective, I've done acting. I mean, I can hold a note. Will I ever call myself a full-blown singer? Never. But I say that to say
that's more than a lot of people. That's right? More than a lot of people sitting on this interview can say. I'm gonna say that makes one of us.
It's in there. It's in there. You got to tap into it.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I've tried. I've been searching far and wide.
I got you.
Okay.
But so I am immersed in the arts. But in that, I think. In that journey, I found that a lot of grassroots arts, but also artists in general, really have a hard time breaking into what is the professional world. And a lot of that is there isn't a lot of infrastructure that supports that transition from emerging artists, from, interested artists to professional artists. And so as I've kind of gone through that world of being able to craft, in many cases, a career for myself, I learned a lot of things. And so it just came back to how do I extend some of the infrastructure I built for myself, and how do I make that common? How do I make it so that the basics are already met for artists across the board, and now all they have to do is be good at what they do, and grow from there. And so that's kind of a lot of the work that moves me now. I'm probably going to get back into choreographing soon, but that's a TBD. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm floating at the moment.
Gotcha. Well, you mentioned you hit a. We'll kind of get back to how Lounge Sessions ties into like your greater body of work since you were 11, which is, I didn't know it went back that far. I knew you had been teaching since you were like just out of high school or in high school.
Yeah, in high school,
dude,
16.
Like
16.
yeah, so I know you had been around like doing things, a lot of things for a while, but like 11, wow. But so we'll get back to how Lounge Sessions ties into that. That story, but really quickly, just kind of like a basic question, like what is the MARN Lounge Sessions? Like what is MARN trying to do with Lounge Sessions? Why are they interesting to you?
Yeah. So when I initially came in, there was a disconnect, I think, with just how MARN had normally operated in the performing arts. And so the MARN Lounge Sessions became a very soft way at first of merging what is MARN, what is visual art, and connecting themselves to the performing arts world here in Milwaukee. And it works really well because all the arts are connected. If you really think about it, visual art is everywhere in music. It's on the album. It's in the clothes. It's in the fashion. They're already connected, right? And so I think being in this gallery specifically made a very natural like shift of like what happens when they're both in the same space, being appreciated at the same time. How do they play off of each other? What is the experience that is created? And so the Lounge Sessions just became a way to invite the performing arts into the space. And in this case, also provide them with, there are lots of performing art spaces, but this is a paid performance opportunity, which is really, really important, is that artists have an opportunity to be paid for their work.
Yeah. Visibility is important, but also like you gotta
actually
pay the rent.
Paid for it, right? Which is really important. And when I was asked to do it, aligns perfectly with the work that I'm doing with my own company. And so that was like a no-brainer, like let's make it happen. And so it's morphed into almost, I don't want to say cabaret because I think then we go like full-blown 80s, but I'm thinking like a cabaret style, very intimate, where you are like right there with the performer in that moment, which is unique in the sense that you're right in front of them. They're right in the same space. There's not a lot of separation between the artist and the audience, which means you can see the performer's face and the performer can see yours. And there's certain like little nuances, I think, that add to just making it an impactful experience, I think, for audience and performer alike.
Yeah. Well, my next question was going to be like, why is it, or how is it a unique experience for someone who's coming to just to watch music? But it sounds like that's what, if I can kind of paraphrase what you were saying, is that like you have this unique setting. It's music and performing arts within kind of a visual art gallery. And then also the kind of that proximity, like physical proximity to the performer, is like those two aspects are kind of what makes a big part of what makes MARN Lounge Sessions unique. Is that kind of
no? Fair? That's exactly it. Yeah. A lot of venues, you normally have what do you call it? About 10 feet of separation, right? Like you have some level of distance from the performer and the audience, whether it be a stage, whether it just be, this is a no-go area. We have speakers in front, whatever it may be.
Some guards.
Right. There's some level of separation. And just because of the nature of the venue, we don't have room for that. But that also provides an opportunity then to engage differently, right? You're there. You're in the midst of your audience, which is a very, very cool and can sometimes be humbling because I think as a performing artist, sometimes we're used to not being able to see the audience really, right? You're on stage, the lights are in your face, you just see shadows and all you get to feel is energy. And that can be really daunting in one capacity because sometimes really you're on stage and you are by yourself. And in this, like really it is you, the stage, and the darkness. Sea of faces that you can't see, just shadows and blobs, right? But in this case, there's not that level of disconnect, right? So it's really you and the people in front of you. And some performers find that more daunting than, being on stage. Sure. And some performers enjoy being able to see who they're engaging with, see who they're performing for, get the reactions, get the feels. And I think this is a really cool space, but also as a performer, it's important, I believe, that you be able to engage with your audience. Like actually see them, engage with them, feed off of them, be able to interact and adapt your performance to who's in the space. And so I think as from another standpoint, it's great for artistic development because you're right there in front of them. There are no shields.
Yeah.
You are as good as you are today, which is also a terrifying part of
right.
performing arts, but that is where we are, right?
Yeah. Well, you keep like preemptively answering questions that I have ready to ask. And the next one I wanted to ask was kind of like, okay, from the artist side, like why is this kind of unique experience? And then you've mentioned that especially for an emerging artist, it can be a good opportunity to kind of like practice in a different setting, in a very like face to face, like you are seeing and reacting to who you're performing with. Like it's very, very personal in that kind of way, which is just kind of like a different kind of experience to add to your repertoire. But then also you mentioned, of course, like paid opportunity, huge. Yeah, can you talk a little bit about like from the artist side, like what you've been hearing from, because we're recording this and we've had 7 or 8 lounge sessions at this point. What have you been hearing from artists about like how this is a unique opportunity for them?
Definitely. So what I'll say is this. One, I'll say there are 3 things. Let me start there. Aesthetic, compensation, and development are like the 3 areas that I think benefit an artist here. Aesthetic, mostly because especially in the music scene, when you're asked to perform, it's usually at a bar or a club or something that is usually associated with nightlife, right? But being in a different venue with a different aesthetic challenges you to engage differently, build your set differently, choose what songs you're going to use differently. And so from that perspective, it starts to shape, and I think in many cases increase the range that a lot of artists have. Like, because if a hip hop artist can engage and adjust their set to, work within a gallery space, just like they would for a bar setting or a club or whatever else, the range of space they can go in and work in and work in increases exponentially, right? So there's that level of it. The compensation, is compensation. Right. And I think as an artist, artists are always asked to do things for free, and unfortunately, that doesn't really lend to them continuing to do art.
Funny how that works.
And so when their compensated opportunities are essential for that infrastructure that I mentioned before, like there has to be consistency. And places where artists know they can go and make money, or else there's no, what are we doing really? So there's that component that they're looking forward to. And then I think the third thing that I may have said was artist development. And artist development has so many like connotations, but really it's just continuing the work. And I think you have to be in different spaces, in different faces, with different demographics to really challenge yourself to figure out who you are as an artist and how you engage. That's really important. And so to that end, I think it's really encouraging to see that happen. And a lot of the artists have already kind of come in the space. They've done their thing. They've noticed things about their set. They've noticed things that they should have brought. And they still all have done amazing shows, but it gives them that opportunity to be like, wow, okay, there's like another step, or there's another level, or there's another layer to whatever I can add. And my performance feels different in this space. What does that mean? There are so many questions that the artist is forced to ask after leaving. And that, I believe, is one of the biggest contributors that the MARN Loud sessions will and eventually have to the arts community.
I won't exceed my patience. I don't believe in God. I need my freedom. Oh my God, I found a way to break it. Why is it so hard to simply exist? I'ma search, I think I feel that love. Just to have it took, now I don't feel no more. I know I'm finna be alright, and I know I'm finna be okay. Yeah, that trauma creeping up today. I need to take a step away. I need to find a break. I need to find a break. I need to find a break.
Speaking of Marn's kind of like organizational mission, it's a lot about I won't quote the whole thing right now, but like it's a lot about marketability and visibility of artists, and also paying artists. It's not explicitly wrote them, but like we do, and also like doing what we can and lending the resources that we have to build kind of an arts ecosystem that is self-sustaining. And so like that it's kind of encouraging, I guess, to hear you kind of talk about like how this is a way to artists to get that visibility, get that compensation, and then also get those kind of artistic questions of like, okay, this is how my performance feels in this kind of space. How did I feel about that? How should I adjust in the future? And then what kind of doors does this open, for me going forward? But for kind of, to get back to you, we started the interview with kind of like who you are, and I want to end on that, as well. So can you talk about how you mentioned like you've been a performer, for a while, since you were 11, and you've spent multiple years as a kind of an artist, as a curator, and so how does MARN Lounge Sessions kind of fit into kind of your development as an artist, your development as a curator, and just kind of like the project that you're I guess the Wanyah Leon project is that, I don't know how to phrase it, but just like your whole body of work is what I'm trying to get at.
No, so this has been really fun. So over COVID, my company shifted drastically. So prior to COVID, my personal work, I was a black dance company. Point blank, period. That is what I did. And I did a lot of residencies. I was performing. I was building works. And I loved every second of it. But there always felt like there was more. There was something missing. And so as like COVID happened, I couldn't teach anymore, which in hindsight was a blessing. I kind of shifted, and that transformed into, okay, there's a lack of spaces. And I think I can do that, right? And so it started with like building shows. It's like since then we're like building band festivals and art festivals and exhibitions and the whole nine. And so I think a lot of the work here has been a catalyst for really rethinking what does it mean to be a space maker. What does it mean to produce, and what does it mean to creatively produce? And I've had a lot of opportunities to play with that idea, explore them from a lot of different angles, a lot of different art genres, right? And so, again, it moved away from just being into dance, but then also getting into music, visual art, poets, singers, like what was happening. And then it became a world of art, right? And then it wasn't so monolithic. It wasn't just dance, and I worked on dance. It was, I engaged with artists. Yeah. I engaged with performing artists. I engaged with artists in general. And in that, it freed up my ability to, I think, opened my understanding of what art can be when we incorporate all the different genres of art, all the different mediums of art. What happens when we start to connect them and build off of them, right? And so in that, like, my body of work has definitely expanded significantly. And it was like leading up to it, but just since I've been here, engaging with more artists, being allowed to like, me having to actually search for artists now, right? So I'm always looking for new artists. And in that, you find a lot of hidden jewels, you find a lot of beautiful things in the city, and you expand the understanding of what your work can be, right? And so a lot of my work now is collaborative. It's a matter of, I find an artist, I'm like, okay, hey, look, I have this idea, but I think, what do you think? I think you'll be perfect for this. I just kind of have a vision, but I really just want to see what you step into and do in this space. And I'll set up everything else, but just like, who are you in this moment, right? And learning the power of letting people be themselves and building off of that. And what happens when we all create from authentic places and we find the pathways and the avenues that are already there, and connect those. And what happens and how do things expand and how things become exponentially more impactful. And that's kind of where I think my brain has been heading, as I do more work, as I work with more artists, as I produce a wider variety of events and projects. It's just a matter of seeing that there is a whole lot more potential than I think we give ourselves credit for when we stop being monolithic, when we stop thinking, okay, I'm a music artist, so I deal with musicians, or I'm a dancer, so I work with dancers, or whatever else that is, right? When we're all just in the same space, interesting things happen.
Yeah, yeah. Does that ever kind of like that wanting to be like resisting being monolithic, does that ever become like kind of overwhelming? I'm imagining even just like for like explaining kind of what you do, you're like, okay, well, sit down. It's
Yeah,
because it's everything. Yeah. Does that ever kind of like get
All the
overwhelming?
time.
Yeah.
And I'm actually struggling with that now, right? So like I took up photography over COVID. I was still teaching, I was dancing, then it was building shows, and then it was doing like artist consulting and artist management, and then it was, you know, producing shows here, and then it was doing so many things, right? And then it starts to like your brain gets pulled in different directions. And what I will say is this: I am learning more and more, but finding a flow. And that the beautiful thing is you can be everything and nothing. And I say that to say, you can have all those skills and they come in when they need to come in, and they kind of shift off when they need to shift off. And, you know, you play with them when you need to play with them. And then before you know it, you're playing with all of them a little bit more comfortably.
Yeah.
And I say that while I'm in that flow, right? I'm trying to like float in that a little bit differently. But, I think the same thing kind of works with the other performing arts. I think that even in like that monolithic state, you have to be monolithic at some point. You have to specialize. You got to like lock in and really focus in on developing those skills. But then after that, I think it's more so of allowing the flow. And I don't want to, I've made a point to not force it. Like as artists come, as opportunities come, as ideas come, they come. I don't think I ever set out one day and be like, you know what? I feel like a dancer and a rapper need to do something today. It's more so, you know, I saw, okay, you got like a cool flow. And then I go and I'm like going about my life, and it might be 3 weeks later. And then I see this other person. I'm like, you know, I feel like there's an artist that you, and then it happens. Right. And I think in allowing, like those authentic flows, I think that's when we cease to be monolithic. I think, it has to happen naturally. Can't force it.
Yeah.
And you kind of just have to, what do you call it? Submit to the flow. And I'm never good with the word submit, but submit to the flow and let it happen.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I was going to, again, keep preemptively answering questions about to ask, but I wanted to give you the chance to have the kind of the final word. So the last question I have is not really a question, but just an invitation to kind of either revisit something that we were talking about before, you know, ask yourself a question you think I should have asked you, or just like kind of leave the audience with something, leave listeners with something that you want them to hear at the end of this, or kind of like remember this interview by.
Yeah. If anything, I would say that ideally the lounge sessions are going to be a platform for artists of all genres to engage. Right now it's focusing on music, but the goal is to allow the lounge sessions to begin to create intimate experiences, right? And so, I mean, I challenge artists who may be listening, reach out. If you have ideas, if you have something you want to do, it's more so about building community within a community. And for that, we need people. So there's always room for another ask, another suggestion. There's always room for another artist. And it's always developing and building and growing. We've developed a foundation. Now it's time for it to find its own life. And so that is where a little bit of letting go has to happen. So
yeah,
that's
unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, yeah, kind of on that note, you were, can you talk about what the future of lounge sessions are going to be here at MARN?
Yeah. So right now we built a foundation on music and the live music. And that's a foundation, right? So it's still going to grow. It's still going to evolve. I think there is an ask that's like floating around of what happens with the other performing arts. And in that, I do intend to build ideally some monolithic, opportunities for those art forms to shine. But I think the lounge sessions eventually can become a fusion. Right. And I think it allows opportunities for, it doesn't always have to be one music artist. It might be two. It might be a poet who opens. It might just be a space where an artist or two need to do a piece before we have a featured artist, whatever that is. Right. But I think what I envision is allowing a space for multiple artists and artistic forms to come together and experience that like intimacy. And so I think there is going to be not a shift, but an evolution of how it like grows and progresses and ideally becomes bigger, right? It is intimate, but we would love a full house, right?
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
So the goal is to, as it grows, as it builds, as it becomes more stable, to be able to add in those more unique components and add in that collaborative nature of having multiple artists and multiple mediums in the same space working together. And so that's the long-term vision, I think. I'm letting it, like I said, grow naturally,
Sure,
kind of
of
find
course,
that
of
flow.
course.
Even now, right, we are taking the first steps of that. We have a DJ and a featured artist, and that's like the first steps of, okay, what happens when we have two artists in the same space? Because DJs are artists too. I'm gonna give them credit for that. I've seen them work some magic.
You seem like almost reluctant, like to say that you're like, all right, you know what? I'll give DJs.
I'll give it. I've seen some dope stuff lately from some DJs, and I'm like, yes, you are.
It's like, you convinced me. You're right.
You know. So you
can stay.
You can stay. So we're building that in and incorporating those different parts, and it'll always be another layer. Once you have a solid foundation, you can add as many layers as you want. So I think that's kind of where we're at.
All right. Well, Wanyah, thank you so much for making some time for me. I'm looking forward to the future of Lounge Sessions.
Dope. Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
If my head explodes, if my head starts ringing,